Hi, everyone. Glad you're all here tonight. You're going to see a lot of charts, and hopefully I explain them well enough for you to understand them as I go through this. It's mostly a review of our 2024 season, but some of the charts show the data from the last 4 years. I think those are the most interesting ones. So, Shannon, do you see my presentation?
Yep, looks good.
All right, great. So I'm going to start just really quickly. I'm thinking there might be a couple of people here who don't actually do this survey. So this is what we collect when we survey. We make PGU population counts, and we log visits to burrows. We log the prey deliveries that the birds are making to burrows. And we do our best to identify what they're delivering. We record disturbances to the birds and tide information, and we make notes of weather that might impact our ability to see the birds, or that might impact what the birds are doing. Sometimes we have fog that we can't even see them at all, practically. Often we're asked who uses our data, and these are three groups, three areas that use our data. The University of Washington, over many years now, has used our data in people doing their master's and doctorate programs. The Puget Sound Ecosystem Monitoring Program has the pigeon guillemot as one of their indicator species. And the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife includes our data in their marine birds database. And they are responsible for building our data system now that stores our data. So we're very fortunate to have them helping us. This is volunteer data for this year. We have 8 regions, as Shannon showed you on the map. And it's pretty cool to see it on a map because it really is a good portion of the Salish Sea that we cover. This year we had 259 volunteers looking at 63 colonies. 754 surveys were performed, and volunteer hours over 4,800. We may reach 5,000. There's a little bit of data yet to come in. This little chart on the right here just shows that, during the season we're surveying about 60 colonies each week. Before I jump into some charts, I want to cover a few definitions. How we establish the PGU population. We take the maximum count for each colony during the year. So it's not a single count at the same time at all colonies. It's the maximum count for each colony, and then we sum those to get the population. An active burrow is a burrow that we have seen a PGU enter, and they may have entered with prey or they may have entered without prey, but all of those burrows together total our number of active burrows. The percent of PGU attempting to breed basically is 2 times the number of active burrows divided by the PGU population. So 2 because it's a pair of PGU, and then times the number of burrows divided by the PGU population. A chick burrow is a burrow that we've seen a PG enter carrying prey. And we consider those successful burrows. We consider the pair that are entering that burrow to be a successful breeding pair. So the percent that are successfully breeding is the pair of pigou times the number of chick burrows divided by the pigou population. And we added a new element this year. We're looking at reproductive success. And this is pretty hypothetical because we don't truly know what the reproductive success of our pigou is. But there, it takes 35 days plus or minus for a hatchling to fledge. So we figure that if there is 4 weeks, a minimum of 4 weeks between the first time we see a delivery to a burrow and the last time we see a delivery to a burrow, then that indicates there is a pretty good likelihood that at least one chick fledged from that burrow. Because 4 weeks between is 28 days, and we figure that we probably didn't see the first delivery to that burrow when it happened, and we probably didn't see the last one. So all of those things come in, all those definitions or all those ideas come in handy in the next slides. And this is just a snapshot of the year. The population of pigou was just about 2,000. When we get a little, the data that you'll see for clallam isn't quite complete. And when we get all of that data, it'll drive some of these numbers up a little bit. So the population is about 2,000. Active burrows, just under 500. We had 277 chick burrows, and you all saw 1,240 prey delivered of one sort or another. This pie chart here shows the relative populations for each of the regions. And Whidbey's been doing it the longest. We have the largest number of colonies. We cover the island pretty thoroughly. Many of the other regions haven't been around for too long, and they're still growing. But it's really interesting to see what they're finding. So there are two charts here that show the breeding success. The chart on the left, the top line, which hovers around, adjust this here, hovers around 50% attempting to breed over the last, well, 3 years at any rate. It was a bit lower in 2021. So 50% of the PGs are attempting to breed on average. And the lower line, the orange line, shows that of those attempting to breed, that would be about 60% of those are actually have chicks, develop chicks in their burrow. And as a total of the total pigou, that's about 30%. The chart on the right shows the relative numbers or the relative percentages for each of the regions. So some of them are really, like Jefferson and Kitsap and South Sound have relatively high percentages of successful breeding to attempt to breed. The orange bars are pretty high up compared to the blue bars. I think one thing I'm always kind of amazed by with our survey is how consistent our numbers are, like how straight this line is on the left chart for attempting to breed and successfully breeding. These two charts indicate what we think may be the reproductive success of our burrows. So as discussed, the chick burrows with 4 or more weeks between the first delivery and the last delivery, we think they may have had a fledgling or possibly 2 fledglings. So if you're looking at the title up above, out of 1,844 pigu, we developed 277 chick burrows, and of those 277 chick burrows, we wound up with 73 burrows with fledglings. Again, hypothetical. So the chart on the left is basically a distribution of all of our chick burrows. And I'll take this first bar here that shows 95 at the top of it, if you can see that. So the number of weeks between the first and last delivery for this one is 0. So that means that these burrows, we saw prey delivered only one time, only on one survey. So there were no weeks between the first and the last were the same delivery. And there were 95 burrows of our 277 burrows that were like that. Not much of a chance that those were successful burrows from a reproductive standpoint. So using the same idea, the one shows that there was 1 week between the first and last delivery for 25 burrows and on. So the burrows that we feel may have developed fledglings would be from this number 4 weeks between first and last delivery and greater. And that totals those 73 burrows. We have a lot of burrows. We have a lot of burrows that we don't see many deliveries during very many surveys. And there could be lots of reasons for that. You know, they could be delivering, that pair could be delivering at a different time of the day. So it just, we can't be certain about any conclusions about how many fledglings there are. This graph on the right shows compares chick burrows to burrows that we think might have reproductive success. And you can see that the gray bars are the ones we think might have fledglings, and the orange bars are chick burrow numbers. And you can see how those percentages of reproductive success burrows to chick burrows are relatively low. And this chart is kind of a summary of that, of the whole process. The blue bar shows the percent of the total PGs that are attempting to breed at each region. The orange bar shows the percentage that are chick burrows out of that, and the gray bar shows the percentage that we believe might have fledged. So some are relatively low and some are pretty high. Kitsap looks pretty productive here in Jefferson County as well. Whidbey is pretty low, but because we have so many pigu, we kind of drive the numbers overall. This section is on provisioning of chick burrows, and this first graph on the left shows the average observed deliveries per chick burrow. And that's pretty consistent over the last 4 years. So it's just over 4 deliveries for each burrow. And then the graph on the right shows the distribution of deliveries. And this shows that there were 277 chick burrows total. And if you look at this first vertical blue bar that has 1-2 under it, this is saying that there were 37.5% of the total number of chick burrows that had only 1 or 2 deliveries during the year, and so on as you go out. So there's undoubtedly some relationship between the number of deliveries that a burrow receives and the success of reproduction fledging in that burrow. But again, without actually having some measure of how many chicks there are, it's very difficult to say anything with certainty about how many chicks we might have. So type of prey, this is very consistent too. This chart is the last 4 years, and gunnel and prickleback, this includes prickleback as well, are the predominant prey across all of the regions. Sculpin in the orange is next, and then the gray line are other. It's either we couldn't tell what they were, or they were something else, like perch, for instance, or kittens. Yeah. I was reminded by my wife. So this shows the type of prey by region, and you can see that gunnel and prickleback are even more focused in the other regions. Whidbey has a high number of sculpin, but much higher than any of the other regions, and I think that's partly due to nearshore topography. But that's something that looks like it'd be fun to figure out with some more study. The other regions are they're pretty similar in terms of relative prey percentages. And you can't really say, it might have something to do with prey availability, or it might have something to do with prey selection. Gunnels they're a little higher in lipid content than sculpin. They would probably be favored by the PGs. So, Whidbey's numbers might represent that there just aren't as many gunnel available in our area. Not all of our colonies have this ratio. Some colonies have more sculpin than gunnels, and some have many more gunnels than sculpin. So it'd be fun to put some sense behind why this is the way it is. This shows the time distribution of prey deliveries, and this top blue line here is the total number of deliveries for each survey week during the season. And this shows that the peak is in the 3rd week of July, and that is pretty much always true. So as you're sitting out there on the beach and you ease into.
He's the professor in charge of the whole forest coach planning class. So he said, he just wrote me back and he said, hey, you know, depending on how far away your property is, maybe I could come over after class one of these
I'm
weeks
sure
with the holly injector.
Not muted right
Just take
now.
care of it right then and there. So I'm gonna see if he'll come by this Friday.
I'm
I
trying
thought
to-
I was being asked a question. I'm pretty
There we
interested.
go. I think I got it. Sorry, Dave.
Thanks, Shannon. I was waiting to answer, actually. And then these lines down below are each of the regions. It's pretty hard to see exactly what's happening with each. There is some variability in, there's some difference between the regions and when they peak. And Kitsap seems to peak maybe a couple of weeks before we do. And San Juan also, this is their first year, but it looks like they may get started a little earlier than the other regions and peak earlier. So that's another thing that would be fun to puzzle out a little bit. Why some regions are a little earlier than others. But overall, it's the peak. We always reach the peak about in the third week of July. And this chart is a comparison, the same, it's basically the same. This blue line here is the same as the previous chart. And the orange line is for 2023. And you can see that they're pretty similar. Sometimes for Whidbey data alone, I've had it for like 6 years running, and they just basically superimpose on each other. We do log disturbances. There hasn't really been a study on the impact of disturbances or any kind of, you know, what do they mean? Do they have some kind of impact on the success of pigou breeding? But anyway, here are some numbers. You'll see that the one on the left, 41% of the disturbances logged are due to bald eagles. And they are obviously the main disturbance. Although I have yet to see an eagle get a pigou, regardless, the pigou are really concerned about them. And the chart on the right-hand side shows that of the large disturbances, which are 30 minutes or longer, that only 8% of all of the disturbances are in that category. And I looked to see, all right, well, what ones are large? And about 3/4 of those were eagle disturbances. But still overall, the number not very large. And then you all experience this, the August exodus of the birds. It's pretty remarkable how quickly they leave. Just one survey, you might be out there and just looks almost normal, and the next survey you may see just a handful of birds. And it's always, it's always on August. Here are a couple of first and last and most things that I found in the data. So the first observed deliveries were on June 10th, and Clallam at Port Angeles and Whidbey at Rolling Hills had those. And the last observed delivery, this may actually even be later than September 17th, but it's South Sound, the Butterball Cove colony. And the most weeks between the first and last delivery to a burrow was 8 weeks. And again, there was a South Sound Butterball Cove, burrow S2, and Whidbey Ledgewood burrow. Most deliveries to a burrow in a single survey is 6. And there were 3 burrows that had that. There were lots of burrows that had 5. I think 6 would be really fun, and 5 would be about 87% of the amount of fun that 6 would have. Most deliveries to a burrow during the season is 18, and Kitsap, Bainbridge, Fletcher Bay had that burrow, and Whidbey Lagoon Point North had a burrow with 18 as well. And most weeks surveyed, 18, which is over a third of a year, and that was South Sound Butterball Cove. That would be fun because I have to say I wasn't really ready to stop the season this year. So I hope they enjoyed it. Now, there is some supporting data. I think Shannon will probably put this up on the website. And if you would like to do your own checking of data, there are 4 years of data here, a data summary for each of the regions. So you can scrape data off of these and do your own analysis and prepare charts as you wish. And that's all I've got. Oh, and there's disturbances as well. That's it.
Thank you, Dave. So I will be sending everybody their own, or at least the regional leads, their own tailored packet, but I will be putting your graphs up on the website. So, but yep, they'll be able to play with their own data. So thank you very much. I know that takes a huge amount of time to put all of that together, and then also for all of your data support throughout the season. We are so fortunate to have you, and yeah, it's really interesting looking at the data and seeing how similar it is from year to year. I know a lot of folks wondered about if we started later this year or if the birds started later, and it looks like it really wasn't much, maybe 1 week.
Yeah,
1 week slower, but
yeah, it's funny, every year, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody. It always feels different than the previous year. And you
right.
start thinking about, well, there's something going on here. And then you finally get it all together and look at it and go, well, no, it was actually pretty much exactly like the previous year.
Yeah, it's really neat to see it, it's presented that way. And thank you for explaining everything. I love the quick hits at the end too. Those were some really interesting tidbits of information. So
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.